Hi, I'm Brienne Cornett, or Dallas, and I'm going to talk a little bit about constructivism. So, constructivism is a learning theory that believes that students construct or build their own knowledge through experiences. Let's say that it's like building a block tower. When you're building your tower, let's say we're going to talk about dogs. So, when you're young, your mother points out a four-legged animal and calls it a dog. So that becomes your foundation. And as you grow, maybe you get a dog. And so by being around the dog, you learn different things about it. Like dogs say woof. So that would be your next level. And then as you continue to learn more and more, your tower begins to grow as you learn more and more based on your experiences. There are many characteristics of constructivist teaching. Encouraging active techniques. You could, letting students get their hands dirty, so to speak. You let them be active in what they're doing. You allow students to reflect and discuss, either in partners, groups, or maybe as a whole group. They get to talk about what they learned, what they did to learn that, and so forth. Teachers are not the center of the stage. They should guide students in learning, not tell them. They should let students find their own path for learning. And differentiation. Not every student is going to learn the same way. So it's important that we use activities that speak to students individually. Constructivism is based on the ideas of several different theorists, and they didn't completely 100% agree with everything that the other one said, but the two main things that they all did agree on is that learning is an active experience and that it builds on prior knowledge. So some founding theorists are Jean Piaget, and his three main concepts that he brought to this theory were assimilation, accommodation, and schemas. Assimilation is when you make a connection between what you've already learned and what you just learned. Accommodation is when you change what you had learned based on new information. Like when you learned that a four-legged animal was a dog, eventually you learned that not all four-legged animals are a dog. So you had to accommodate. Schemas are those preconceived ideas that you continue to build on, like the dog. Another theorist is John Dewey. His main concept that he brought was the role of social interaction. He believed that humans build understanding through interactions with the world around us and with others. Jerome Bruner is another theorist, and his main framework is the foundation for constructivism. The idea that learners construct knowledge based on their experiences and that learning is active. He also brought a categorization, which are the rules for sorting your information. Like dogs have four legs, they have fur, they have a tail, they say wolf. You categorize these different things. He also brought the idea of readiness for learning, which is that subjects can be taught at any stage of development according to the child's cognitive abilities, and spiral curriculum, which is revisiting basic ideas and continuing to build on them until you reach the full mastery and understanding. And he also stressed the importance of social interaction. So to see what makes constructivism different from traditional teaching, it's important to compare the two. In traditional classrooms, the teachers have the role of lecturing and telling the students the new information. It's very teacher-centered. And students have a passive role where they mainly just listen and take notes. Assessments come in mainly pass or fail grades, and like we all probably have had the experience, and regardless of if you pass or fail, the teacher continues on to the next concept. Traditional classrooms also have students mainly working alone in their desk, set up in rows facing the teacher at the front of the room, and the curriculum is mainly it's a fixed curriculum regardless of student interest. On the other hand, constructivist classrooms, the teacher takes the role as the guide on the side that assists the student in learning, and the student is given the active role in which they are responsible for their learning. Assessment comes in many forms in a constructivist classroom. It could be anecdotal notes while you're observing the class. It could be portfolios of student work. It could be tests, quizzes, or just any variety of alternatives. Also, students work in groups or pairs that helps encourage discussion and hands-on activities. Neat, orderly rows is one thing you won't normally see in a constructivist classroom. Also, the main curriculum is guided by student questions, but it's also the teacher's responsibility to make sure that the students stay on task. The PAR model of learning stands for present, apply, and review. In the present stage, you spend very little time presenting the new information, and you make it as student-centered as possible. The most amount of time is spent on the apply stage. This is the stage in the lesson that the students are actively applying their newly learned skills. This could include worksheets, discussions, projects, any number of things. The main focus of this stage is mastery. The review stage should take the least amount of time. This stage should provide closure for the lesson, and it mainly focuses on emphasis and repetition of the skill. It could include peer explaining, quizzes, a class discussion, providing a summary of the main points, a whole variety of things. In connection with constructivism, the PAR model focuses on differentiation, about making it a personal experience for each student. It also aligns with the basic framework for constructivism, such as giving the students an active role and making it very student-centered and building on prior knowledge. So let's take a look at an example of a PAR model in action. So say I want to teach a lesson on multiplication. My focus is on the standards of adding within 20 using mental strategies, determining if groups' numbers have odd or even members by pairing and writing equations, and by applying properties of operations as strategies for multiplication. My objective is to have students identify and record multiplication problems using manipulatives. In the presentation stage, I would begin by asking my students if it's important to multiply and why, if they know how, and then to propose that they do know how, but they just don't realize it. I would then pass out the magnet boards. I would give them a few minutes to explore, and then we would begin by having them create just simple addition problems, such as 5 plus 5, 3 plus 3, and then move on to things such as 3 plus 3 plus 3. And I would tell them that they had just multiplied, and explain that multiplication is simply adding groups of the same number. And then we would model a few more, such as 4 plus 4 plus 4. Next, I would move to the apply stage. I may continue to model a few more equations and have them follow along with a we do kind of scaffolding. I would pose questions such as how many are in blank groups of blank, and then allow them to do it themselves. And once I see that everyone has the general idea, I would explain. Then I would bring in and explain that we say times in multiplication. So then we would move on to ask it, and I would ask them to do like 2 times 3 and other simple equations like that. I would then group the students and allow them to come up with other simple equations with their groups and model them with the magnets as well as write the equations down on a piece of paper. Throughout this stage, they will be grouping the magnets and then writing the equation, as well as writing the equation and then grouping the magnets. And I would let them to continue to practice for however long that we needed to. And I would also be walking around the room observing and everything. And after some time, I would transition into the review stage. I would ask the students to define multiplication in their own words. I would give them time. I would give them a short quiz on some of the simple equations that we learned. And this is a scenario of how I would use the PAR model to teach multiplication. So that's a little bit about constructivism. I hope you learned a little bit. Bye.